Every single organization today, I don't care if you're big or small, you're facing digital threats. But here's the real question. How do you decide what to protect first, and how much should you spend? Well, it's not about guesswork. It's about having a solid plan. So let's dive into the blueprint for managing information security risk.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to walk through 5 steps together. We'll start with the absolute basics, like what even is risk? Then we'll get our hands dirty. We'll figure out how to take stock of our assets, pinpoint their weaknesses, and actually calculate the potential damage. And finally, we'll pull it all together to make some smart, confident decisions about security.
So first things first, before we can even think about managing risk, we have to kind of break it down. We need to understand its basic DNA. What is this thing actually made of? It really all boils down to this one simple but super powerful idea. You've got something valuable, that's your asset. That asset has a weak spot, that's the vulnerability. And there's something or someone out there that can take advantage of it, that's the threat. When those 3 things line up, boom, you've got risk. Asset, vulnerability, threat. Remember those 3, they're the building blocks for everything else. You can think of this whole process as a clear 4-stage loop. It's a life cycle. First, we identify our risks. We just figure out what could possibly go wrong. Then we analyze them to understand just how bad it could be. From there, we evaluate the risks against our business goals. And finally, we prioritize. We decide which fires to put out first. That's the master plan right there. Let's jump into our first practical step, and honestly, this is a big one. It might sound totally obvious, but it's where so many security plans fall apart. You absolutely, positively cannot protect what you don't know you have. It's impossible to secure a secret server if you don't even know it exists, right? So what exactly do we mean by an information asset? Look, it's not just your files, it's anything that touches information your business cares about. The key takeaway here is really simple. If losing it or losing control of it would hurt your business, then it's an asset and you need to protect it. And you've really got to think bigger than just files and folders. Your assets include customer data, for sure, but it's also the physical stuff, like servers and laptops. It's the software that runs on everything. It's your network, the cloud services you pay for. It even includes the people with access and the buildings where it all happens. It really is the whole shebang. Okay, so you've done the hard work. You've made a list of everything you have. Now for the next logical question. Is everything on that list equally important? No way. A public marketing flyer is not nearly as critical as, say, your customer credit card database. So the next step is to figure out just how valuable each asset is. And we do that through something called classification. Just look at these circles. Think of it like this. The stuff on that outer green ring is public, no big deal if it gets out. But as we move closer to the center, things get more and more sensitive. You go from internal to confidential until you hit that red core, restricted data. This is your secret sauce, and if it gets out, it could cause serious damage. This map tells you exactly where to focus your best defenses. All right, we know what we have, and we know how much it's worth. Now we need to figure out what could actually go wrong. This means we've got to look outward for the dangers, and we also have to look inward for our own flaws.
And listen, it is so important to get the difference between these 2 terms straight. A threat is the who or the what that can hurt you. A hacker, a fire, a computer virus. A vulnerability is the why they can hurt you. It's the unlocked door, the weak password, the unpatched server that the threat uses to get in. And believe me, threats come in all shapes and sizes. I mean, look at this. They can be natural, like fires or floods. They can be human, and that could be a malicious hacker or just an employee who makes an honest mistake. They can be environmental, like a simple power outage. And of course, you've got the technological threats we always hear about, like malware and ransomware. So, we've identified our assets, we've found their weaknesses, and we know what threats are lurking. Now we get to the analysis phase. This is where we move past just making lists of scary things and start to measure what they could actually cost the business in real money. Now, there are 2 main ways to go about this. The first is qualitative analysis. Think of this like a quick gut check. You use simple labels like high, medium, and low. It's fast, and it's based on expert opinion. Then there's quantitative analysis. This is where we get down to the nitty-gritty numbers. The whole goal here is to put a specific price tag on a risk. So to get that rupee value, we start with something called the single loss expectancy, or SLE. Let's just say a server is worth 10,000 rupees, and a big power surge would wipe out half of its value. That means the SLE,
The cost of that one single incident is 5,000 rupees. Simple, right? Okay, next up, we need to figure out how often this bad thing is likely to happen. That's what we call the annual rate of occurrence, or ARO. So if an event is expected to happen, say, once every 4 years, its ARO is just 1 divided by 4, which is 0.25. And now we put it all together. The magic formula is the annualized loss expectancy, or ALE. You just multiply the cost of a single incident, that's our SLE, by how often you think it'll happen in a year, our ARO. And that gives you the total amount of money you can expect to lose per year from that one specific risk. Let's use the example from our source material to make this real. Imagine an asset worth 10 lakh rupees. A certain risk would cause about 40% damage, so our SLE is 4 lakhs. Now, we expect this to happen once every 4 years, so the ARO is 0.25. You multiply those two, and you get an annualized loss expectation of 1 lakh rupees. Now that's a real number you can work with.
So we've done all the hard work of identifying and analyzing. We're at the final, and I'd argue the most important stage, turning all that analysis into action. This is where we actually make the calls that protect the business.
And this right here, the risk matrix, is one of the best tools in your toolbox. It is so simple, but so powerful. We just plot every risk based on how likely it is to happen versus how much damage it would cause. Anything that lands in that top right corner, high likelihood, high impact, gets flagged as critical. It's a crystal clear visual way to show the bosses what needs to be fixed right now.
But which risks should you actually fix? Well, that all depends on two really important ideas. Risk appetite is the big picture strategy. Like a bank might say, we have a very low appetite for fraud. Risk tolerance is the specific, nitty-gritty number. That's when they say, okay, but specifically, fraud losses cannot go over 5 lakh rupees this year. See the difference? Strategy versus the hard limit.
And this leads us to a huge business reality. You don't have to fix every single risk. Sometimes it's a perfectly valid strategic decision to formally accept a risk. Now, why on earth would you do that? Well, maybe the potential impact is just tiny. Or, and this is a big one, maybe the cost to fix the problem is way more than what you'd lose if the bad thing happened. At the end of the day, it's a simple cost-benefit analysis.
So, when you boil it all down, this whole process, it's not a one-time project. It's not something you do once and then check a box. Threats are always changing, new vulnerabilities pop up, your own assets evolve. It's really a continuous cycle of making smart choices to protect what really truly matters to your organization. This blueprint, it gives you the power to see your risks clearly, to put a number on them, and to prioritize them based on actual data, not just fear. It gives you a framework to answer the biggest question of all. Now that you know what could go wrong, what are you going to do about it? Which risks will you fix, and which ones will you accept?